Welcome to Las Vegas. You all heard the story about the young bull and the old bull? Young bull and old bull out roaming the range one day. The crest of the hill spotted a herd of heifers belong. The young bull, kind of frisky. So let's run down there and breed one of those heifers. The old bull, a seasoned old bull, says, let's walk down there and breed them all. And we get it. I'm an old bull in this business. Anyway, my name's Bray. I'm with Wolfpack Publishing. We're one of the largest Western publishers, if not the largest. We specialize in the traditional Western. And I'm going to let the panel introduce themselves, starting with Courtney, Joyner.
Hi, Courtney, Joyner, as Mike just said, and I write the Shotgun series for 20Books, and knocked around fruit screenplays and television a little bit, and very happy to be here.
My name is Elana Johnson, and if you look me up on Amazon, you will not see any Westerns, because I write all of my Christian cowboy romances under Liz Isaacson. So I've been self-publishing those for just over 4 years.
My name is Eric Knight. I mostly spend my time writing epic fantasy, but a few years ago I started a series, an action adventure comedy series, which I set in the Old West. It's kind of, you think about it, it's sort of like Indiana Jones, and it has a lot of the humor going on, fast-paced, and it's just, I started it for fun because it's a blast. I grew up on a ranch in Arizona, so it's just easy for me to kind of slip back into that. I cut my teeth on Louis L'Amour, so it's just it's just something I do for fun, and I'm glad to be here.
Louis told me he was sick of you cutting your teeth on him. I'm L.J. Martin. I've written lots of Westerns and lots of thrillers and a few everything else. I was published by Bantam and Avon and Pinnacle and Gale and a few others. And got tired of those folks and now went to the real publisher, Wolfpack Publishing, and have had a lot of books with those folks.
All right, so my name is Peecher, and I just write Westerns. I've got 40 books out and started publishing in 2012, but most of those books have come out in the last couple of years, and pretty much all were Westerns and traditional Louis L'Amour type Westerns.
I'm going to have each of the panelists address a different portion of the business, starting with Courtney. Court has a big background in the movie business. I don't know how many he has under his belt now, 35 movies. Anyway, talk a little bit about the movie business.
Well, that's actually how I came to Westerns, because I'd written a lot of horror movies and television and things like that. And I wrote a screenplay about the life of Belle Starr that was optioned but never made. And this was years ago. This was before True Grit and kind of everything. And I was trying to get into the Western Writers of America, and they kept rejecting me because I had never written any fiction, anything. But I had done enough writing about Western movies, and they finally let me in because of the journalism. And what I discovered in the moment, I think Larry was the very first person I met when I walked through the doors of the hotel. But what I found was suddenly everyone encouraging me to really write fiction and start writing fiction. And that's what is so great about like conferences like this, because I met editors through the WWA, and that was how I started writing Western fiction. It was also the reason that my agents dropped me almost immediately. But fortunately, all of that has come full circle, and the writing of the novels and the Westerns brought me back to the movie studios. And
I know nothing about movies.
Yes, there is.
Elana, she crosses through a lot of genres. She's in my neighborhood a lot. Do you get any heat over that?
I get any heat over it?
Heat over showing up in classic westerns?
No, because my books are Western. So, I don't write like Westerns like, Rob writes Westerns. I write romance that have Western things in them. So I write cowboy romance. And I try to make sure that I include all those things that women or other romance readers want to see in their Western romance. So I put all my books in Christian Westerns and frontier pioneer Western romance and religious romance and religious Westerns and all that because that's where they are. They're Christian cowboy romances.
I think that's pretty interesting. We also cross a lot of genres and never get heat over it. We even go into place fiction into nonfiction genres and get no heat. So consider expanding your genres. Eric's next, and we never decided on a topic, so I'm gonna just let him run.
Well, I guess I'll just talk about my series. It was the main character is called Ace Lone Wolf, and he's a half Apache gunslinger. And I wanted to make something that was just fun, that moved like, again, referring to the Louis L'Amour novels, things don't take a lot of time to happen. They move, they go quickly, and that's what I want to do. I want to make every chapter have some action in it, just move it real quick, and then I wanted to play with every single trope out there. Started with a train robbery, I've got shootouts, I just wanted to have fun with all of them. And I wrote the first one and it got picked up by the Kindle Scout program when they still had that. And that was encouraging enough that I just started turning out more of them. I've got 5 now, the 5th one isn't published yet. But really they're just a joy to write. I mean, Ace is a fun character. Again, I said it's a little bit like Indiana Jones or the Mummy in the sense that some of the novels, there's a little bit of a supernatural element in it. In the first book, he ends up searching for this lost Aztec temple. And as you can imagine, there's bad things in the temple when they get there. But along the way, he gets to run into Doc Holliday and Wyatt Earp and in other books, it's Billy the Kid. And people will say, well, this person wasn't in that state at that time. I don't care. I say it at the front of the book. One of my favorite sayings, never let the truth get in the way of a good story. And so really, I just want to mash it all up and have a lot of fun with it. And my character is actually based on, I read a book. This guy his grandfather was the great Apache chief Cochise. And he and his clan, under the leadership of his mother, they fled as they were being moved from one reservation to another. They were first put on the Chiricahua Apache reservation, and then there were some problems, and so they moved them to another one. And this clan, about 30 people, they took off and fled into Mexico to a stronghold in the Sierra Madre Mountains. And this was an autobiography I got all this that he'd written when he was quite old, like 100 years old. And so it's just such a fascinating story of how they managed to survive. They lived free up until the 1910s, 20s, when they just sort of filtered into society because the young people didn't want to live up in the mountains. But they survived. They had all these close encounters. They ended up allying with the local ranchers when one of the Mexican generals wanted to start another revolution and take them down. They ended up allying with the ranchers and the Yaqui Indians, who are historical enemies of theirs. And I just was so fascinated by the idea of how these people managed to survive on their own that I wanted to take a character. And so he grew up there, and his grandfather was Cochise, and he's 20 years old and he's out wandering around. He just gets into one adventure after another, and it's just fun. You won't get any historical accuracy, although at the end I'll say, okay, these things actually happened, but I really wanted to bring this story out, this really just remarkable story of how these people, when all the other tribes were getting put on reservations and all these problems, that they managed to survive on their own. And it's a great story, and I wanted to find some small way to sort of bring it to light, and kind of under the leadership of his mother until he got old enough to become the leader of the tribe.
LJ's got a book out. He wrote with a guy named Craig Martelle. It's called Write Compelling Fiction. I highly recommend it if you're interested in the Western genre. But Larry, can you talk a little bit about the craft?
About the craft.
Larry's also the founder of Wolf Pack Publishing.
It's called Write Compelling Fiction. And I think that's the first thing you're going to learn about the craft is you want them to keep turning pages, and more than anything else, at the end of a chapter, you don't want to have them lay it down. I often tell a story, if you're going to end a chapter, don't ever end it with, I reached up and turned off the light. You want to end it with, I reached up and turned off the light, about to go to sleep and heard the window being pushed up. Or something to that effect. We were talking about movies. I have half a dozen screenplays. That's the toughest business in the world. I admire Courtney for being able to tough it out. I do, however, write in the sit field method, which we went to a screenwriting class, and he talked about the 3-act play, and I pretty much follow that in all my books. Mike talked me into writing a young adult, which I figured I finally found out my age level, but really about 15. But he managed to keep it at #1 on Amazon's young adult Western list for 11 weeks. I don't know whether he did that because he had talked me into writing it, or whether or not it was a decent book. But in the craft, I could go on for 2 weeks here talking about craft, talking about characterization through point of view, and et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. We can just go on for a long time. I really suggest you buy that book that Craig Martelle wrote all the smart parts of. Anything else? No. Thank you.
I've had the pleasure of working with a few authors that originally started their careers as newspaper reporters. Chet Cunningham is one, and Frank Rodgers is another. Robert Vaughn, who is still writing, 82 years old, he actually owned a newspaper. Eric he makes me nervous, because these old newspaper reporters don't believe in writer's block, and they just write. Can you address that, Eric?
You want Eric to do it, or you want me to do it? Robert, I'll do it. I'll talk about writer's block a little bit. So yeah, I started my career in newspapers and worked as a reporter and editor and owned a newspaper for a decade. And newspapers, not a whole lot of future right now in newspapers. A lot of them are going out of business. So I started casting them out for something else to do. Found 20Books, and I thought, I'd already published a few books that were set kind of Civil War era and more dark comedy, which is tough to do with the Civil War. Also tough to find an audience for that kind of book. But I found 20Books, and I thought, well, what would I want to write? And the answer for me is Westerns. I don't get writer's block. I'm doing about a book a month, like probably a lot of you are doing. And the reason I think that I don't get writer's block is because if you're writing Westerns, then there is just so much to write about. You've got great time period, the 1800s. From the Mexican-American War up to early 1900s, it's just rich with so much history. The expansion of the country. It's fun to write about. Westerns, whether you're writing action adventure, or romance, or humor. I've read Eric's book. All of those things are encompassed in Westerns. You look at Lonesome Dove, right? You've got Woodrow Call, and most of us, I think, are writing Woodrow Call. Not enough of us are writing Gus McCrae, right? Eric did a great job writing Gus McCrae. He's got a lot of humor in his book, and I like that. I like humor. I like to laugh. I like to make my readers laugh. So why would you have writer's block when you've got all of this rich stuff that you can write about, right? Whatever other genre you're writing, Westerns can fit into that in some way. You've got the hero characters, John Wayne and Clint Eastwood type people, right? And I think Westerns are great. And even if you're writing sci-fi, there's Western science fiction, right? So, yeah, don't get writer's block writing Westerns.
We're going to open it up. Obviously, we got a diverse panel. We're going to open it up for questions. Feel free to jump up.
So I'm going to put the microphone right here, so if you want to come up and ask questions.
We'll keep talking.
Okay. I've never used these. For people that write action adventure kind of westerns, what are like the 3 or 4 biggest tropes that you try to hit when you're writing?
Who's on first?
Okay, this just goes to the odd origins of different book projects. My Shotgun series actually started as a failed comic book. And I knew Gary Goldstein through the Western Writers of America, who was the editor at Kensington, and he was actually looking for something that he thought would capture younger readers because Django Unchained was about to come out. So I showed him this crazy thing I had done because I was trying to basically do a spaghetti Western as a comic, and here was this guy with a double-barrel Greener shotgun for his left arm, and he's on this thing. And he took all that material, gave it to the board of directors and said, you want something different than our traditional line, here it is. And they gave me a contract for a book series. So for me, I was like, okay, now here we go. So of course, it's going, it's always, in my case, not the most original thing, but it is going to be the revenge trail. But because I kind of created this bizarre world, I was allowed to go larger and larger and larger as far as blowing up trains and, just all kinds of wonderful things that, because there's no limits on your pages. But because I had started with something a little outlandish, I was able to go more outlandish when I actually put the stories together. And, but always thinking in terms of, Ennio Morricone playing in my head the whole time. So that kept me focused on what I was trying to do.
If you want to pass that, I'll jump on it. A hat, a horse, and a gun. Those are your 3 biggest tropes.
I think you got to write realism. I'm talking to a lot of sci-fi writers, so I don't mean realism in 2080. I mean realism now. I talk about people jumping on your technical errors. When I one time put a cigar in a 1873 Western, I got a letter from a guy that said that cigar was not introduced in the West until 1875. So, but I think realism is a great big part of it. There's talking about what's happened in the West. I mean, what an incredible time when some guy climb on his horse and take off with half a pound of hardtack and a half a pound of jerky and be gone for a month. I mean, there's a story every time you turn around. And you learn so much when you're researching. One of the things that I found fascinating in this young adult book, which was set on the Oregon Trail, 2,000 miles of Oregon Trail, 13 graves to the mile. Now, if you can't figure out a story and a plot out of that, you got to go to work on your imagination.
So this is for Elana. Western romances are quite popular, ladies, and readers gobble them up, from what I understand. So can you tell us from a technical standpoint, if we're interested in writing those, what's the reader expectations that we have to hit? What are the elements within a book that make those irresistible to those readers? And they're quite voracious readers and gobble them down. So what goes into that? Explain that to us.
So it's kind of the same thing as, I write contemporary westerns, so I'm not writing in the past. So I write a ranch in Texas today, as it is right now. So, but I think Rob hit on it, you gotta have a cowboy hat. So if you wanna write a Western romance, you gotta have a romanticized version of a cowboy. That's what your female readers and male readers who read romance will want that as well. And I have a little old guy who emails me with every romance I put out. He's on my newsletter list, and his wife passed away 3 or 4 years ago, and he emails me every time and tells me how much his wife would love my romances. So he's this, old man reading these romance novels because they remind him of his wife and how much she loved them. So in a romance novel, if you're writing romance, or if you don't write romance and you want to, or you want to understand why your wife reads romance, it's because we want this romanticized, perfect version of a man, right? We know that cowboys are not really this way, but this is how we want them to be. And so you gotta have a man with a cowboy hat, and he has to have broad shoulders. That's like a given. And it doesn't matter if you've never met a cowboy that doesn't look like that. That's what we want. And they work on a ranch or a farm. They always have horses, they have dogs, they are animal lovers. So I think the Old West cowboy, the ideal version of that is a man who loves country, who loves God, who loves family, who loves animals. And if you can provide that reader experience in a romance, where the cowboy is going to ride to the rescue and save the woman and protect his family, protect his land, and has this deep tie to community and country, then that's what you're looking for in creating a Western romance. And you create a man like that, and then you give him a really strong woman to fight for, and the rest is, totally easy to write.
I'm an absolute expert on Western romance, as I have written half of one. With my beautiful wife, Kat Martin, who's a 25 times New York Times bestseller, and a lot of Western romances, but now writes romantic suspense. So ask her if she can corner the hall.
So if you were to start out writing a new Western today, would you as a publisher or you as writers want to do it as a standalone or as a series, which has more staying power for you?
I would say series. People really seem to want to be able to find a character that they connect to and then return to that character or characters over and over again. Also, as you know, it's much easier to market because you get people into one and then they hopefully will follow up. But anybody else?
I've probably written, 5 series. Have one going right now that's a thriller series, but it's really tough to have him start out with brown eyes and not end up with blue eyes, so you have to be a little careful. You have to have pretty good notes. I don't think there's any question that, to parrot what he just said, that people like series, because if they love your character. I just had a great fan email letter that says, I really love the relationship between these two guys, and you can start building all kinds of different things in series that you can't do with a standalone book. But every book should stand alone. I don't care whether they read number 7 to start with or number 1.
So I've done a lot of standalones and several different series, and I think if you look right now at the folks that are selling the most books, and if I look at where my best sellers are, I get pretty good read through on my series, but the standalones in Western seem to do really well. C.J. Pettit, R.O. Lane are both selling a lot of books, and I'm pretty sure that most of what they release are standalones. And I think that just, for whatever reason, seems to appeal to the readers more.
Okay, as a publisher, we publish both standalones and series. We give more weight to series when we're going to accept a manuscript. We give a lot more weight to series because we market them different. We're marketing them to a completely different audiences we are the standalones. Standalones, we feel that go to the casual readers, the people who read 6 books a year. We want the people who would read 6 books a week, and that's the series.
That actually makes me think of a different question. What do you think of generational series? Oh, sorry. What do you think of generational series like the Saga series from Louis L'Amour?
I'm a huge fan. I love the Sackett's books. I never tried to write any generational stuff, but I think you could tie that together really nicely. And also, like if you're writing a series based on one character or a couple of characters, after you do it 6 or 7 times, it can be really easy to get stale. So the generational thing is a great way to still connect to, because you want to try to connect your series together as much as you can so people don't have to start all over again from scratch. And then if you have, well, this is the next generation or a previous generation, I think it would work really well.
Agree totally. If you look at older series like John Jake's, that were just an absolute must-read for me when I was growing up. The Sackett's, of course, are fabulous. Louis L'Amour wrote 30 of those books in a canyon not too far from my house, my home in Bakersfield, California. I used to drive by and wave and say, boy, I wish I could have a 3-bedroom, 1-bath house someday.
So, yeah, I agree with everything that they're saying. It's a big project, and I think about it, but it's such a big project. I just need to get the next book out.
Thank you.
Okay, so my question is, I was really excited, Eric, to hear about your books, and I'm going to go read them all now. So my next series is sort of similar, where I'm taking the Western aspects, but I'm adding in a lot like Indiana Jones, a little bit of supernatural, some like steampunk tech, that kind of thing. But when I started this project, I talked to some authors who wrote more traditional historical Westerns and contemporary Westerns. And they were saying that generally readers of Westerns have certain expectations, obviously. But they suggested that I market more towards sci-fi fans, since I had added in those other elements. So my question to you all was, those of you who add in the kind of different elements from other genres into your Westerns, do you find that you're marketing more towards like the sci-fi fantasy readers, or do you actually end up pulling in the more traditional Western readers also?
Yeah, I don't know. I've had a lot of trouble marketing this series. If it's action adventure and I try to get in that category, it's just dominated by big names. It's really hard to get anywhere. And then in the Westerns category, I get people who are mad because they thought they were going to get a real Western.
That's what I was wondering.
And mine's not. They're not too many of them, but some of them are unhappy about that. And that's okay, because then people who are looking for that, maybe will see that review, and I don't want you to buy it if that's not what you're looking for. But really, I mean, you just have to try to market it wherever you can and see where it finds its audience. I don't actually know where the readers for that series comes from, but they somehow keep popping up. So I guess if I could market it toward movies, it'd be easy. Indiana Jones, again, you throw a little supernatural element in there and a little bit of realism, and you're good. But so I don't know.
I wish I had a wiser eager remark for that, but I really don't. When I jumped into, but I got tired of dealing in New York and jumped into the self-pub business. I sold about 14 books until I teamed up with Mike Bray, who was an SEO expert. Michael Anderley and Mike Bray, you want to figure out how to sell books, those are the guys to ask, not me.
So, those readers are probably not my readers. Okay, my readers are looking for historical accuracy, or at least genre accuracy, right? So it's got to look and feel like an Old West town, even if it's not exactly an Old West town. Those elements, you're looking for a different readership, and certainly if it was me, I would be going to sci-fi. And I do think, I'm not saying that the opportunity doesn't exist, but most of my readers are going to be retirees, and that's just not what they're looking for. But I mean, I know Craig had sci-fi western, right? And I co-wrote a series with a girl who wrote, but how we got hooked up is she wrote sci-fi westerns, and I said, you want to write a regular western? And so, those books are out there, and they do have readership, but I don't think it's the same audience.
Yeah, that's why I just wanted to see if you guys had that experience as well, which it sounds like you did.
If it's not the same audience, change them. Get them to read one of your books.
That's great advice.
I will just add that when you're marketing books, you always want to start with the biggest genre first. So in romance, I market to all romance readers, not just Western romance readers. I market to all, and then I narrow it from there. So I would start with your sci-fi, fantasy, spec fic audience, and narrow it down from there, based on tropes or other actual genres that you can narrow with.
Thanks, guys.
Hi everyone. I'm asking for my father. After years of harassing him to write a Western, as he's read every single one ever written, he's finally got it done. We are taking care of the technical side of it, but my advice, or my question is, what advice would you give to a first-time older author who's coming into the Western genre, self-published?
Join 20Books. Seriously. Wolfpack gets 10 to 20 to 40 unsolicited manuscripts a week. We turn down 99.9% of them. And usually when we get a follow-up question, why, and would you consider, or would you advise self-publishing, we send them to 20Books every time. I can walk away with a clean conscience. It doesn't cost the author anything to get all the information to know whether they want to go the self-publishing route or not.
No advice for a new author in this genre?
I would agree with Mike. I did all of the things. That they talk about in 20Books, okay? I read Chris Fox's books. I read Brian Meek's book. My career is a 20Books career, okay? And so, yeah, I think Mike is right. All the same things still apply if you're trying to sell a book. Just because it's Western doesn't mean that it works any different. And so I think that what he's saying is right. In terms of marketing and in terms of selling books, go to 20Books and follow the advice.
Works. Okay, thanks.
Can you say something?
I'll pass it. Don't expect to buy a house on the beach with your first book. Okay. I was quite sure I was going to, but it didn't happen that way. But you just got to be diligent, put your head down, your tail up, learn from your mistakes, and don't pay too much attention to your readers group if you happen to join one. You're the best judge of your own work. Okay, I've had lots of good friends and great writers. It's my philosophy that there are more great books sitting on garage shelves that have ever been published because somebody has thin skin. I was lucky enough to get my first Western picked up out of a slush pile of 1 million or so books because somebody just reached in and grabbed it. And My wife had sold her first book 6 weeks before that, so if I hadn't have sold that, then she'd probably kick me out, I don't know.
I think that you should decide what you want from your publishing, because what you and your father might want might be different than what I want. So when I've done consulting and I get this question a lot, what should I do? Should I set my book at 99 cents or should I charge $2.99? Should I go wide? Should I go KU? Should I market this? Should I market it? Is Facebook better than Amazon? Is this? And it always comes down to, why are you publishing? So you have to understand that. That should be the core of your business model, because self-publishing is a business. And for many years, I taught elementary school. I just retired, and so I had a day job. I had insurance, and writing was not really a business, it was a hobby. And as the writing started to make more and more and more money, I was like, I have to maybe treat this a little bit differently. What do I really want this writing to do for me? So if your dad just loves to write Westerns and his goal is to see it published, then that might be enough. You know, I get that question a lot. Well, I just want to publish it for my kids. Okay, great, then you do that. But if your goal is something else, and I'm gonna be real honest, my goal is to make as much money as I can make. So I want to make money with my books. So then I make sure that I study the genre. So, and I make my cover look like the other covers. And I look at the price points, and I decide 99 cents doesn't really fit my business model of making money. I might move more copies, I don't make more money. And you can test that yourself, right? So I can put a book out at $4.99 and see how much money I make in the first 30 days using my regular launch tactics. And I can put a book out at 99 cents and see how much money I make. Because I know my bottom line basement goal is to make money. So whatever is going to make the most amount of money for me is what I'm going to do. So does that make sense? So yeah, so if your goal is to make money with the book, then you can follow the 20Books model. There's other groups you can follow that promote certain things that don't follow my business model, even though I've tried them. I don't do everything everyone in 20Books says to do because it does not fit with my business model. So I think it's a great resource. There's a lot of great resources, but bottom line is you should know what you're expecting to get from your writing. What are you trying to achieve with it? Is it so you can say you published a book, you want to give it to your kids, your grandkids, you want to make money? I mean, even if the money is not that important to you, but it's a one reason, maybe not the top reason, you're still going to do some of those two market things to do that. Does that make sense?
Absolutely, thank you.
I have a question about audience, I think. I have written a historical novel that's traditionally published that is a woman who disguises as a man to fight in the Civil War. So she's a badass. And I would love to write more badass female characters in a historical setting, so I thought Western. But it seems to me like the audience is probably predominantly men. And so I'm wondering, A, if that's a good assumption on my part, and B, is there a market for female protagonists like that in Western, or would it be better to tweak toward historical and romance and try to fit into those markets instead? You know, like a True Grit kind of character, or like some of the characters in Godless, those kinds of characters. Those are TV shows and movies.
Well, what you just described sounds actually like a fantastic movie.
Right?
And yeah, it does. It's just like Godless. And I think that the thing is with Westerns is that the genre is so open. Now, where it would find the traditional readership, well, you know, that kind of goes back and forth. We're talking about steampunk. I've been accused of being a steampunk author. I don't have a piercing or a tattoo, so I don't really even fit in, you know, But I am, because I do this kind of crazy Western series. It's been very successful. And in fact, I've sold the movie rights to it. So I don't know that there's always kind of the traditional way to follow, if you will, what you think a Western should be. But then also things like what Portis did with True Grit. Who would have thought, and he was a young newspaper man, would write a novel in a feminine voice that would literally almost change everything. And as far as the way Westerns were going to be approached with that beautiful first-person prose.
Has anybody done it since him? I mean, there's Vengeance Road, which is YA, traditionally published, which I loved, but I don't think sold well.
But this is, I wrote a script about the life of Belle Starr that has been optioned multiple times. And now it hasn't been made yet, but every time it goes, it's been Jennifer Aniston bought it, Hilary Swank bought it, Reese Witherspoon bought it. So why we haven't been able to get it done with, the caliber of people attached to it is a whole nother question. But it always strikes everyone who says, oh my gosh, this would be so terrific to do a female protagonist-driven Western.
Where they're giving me the sign. We did a survey through Wolfpack a few years ago with over 40,000 email subscribers. And it was kind of interesting. The 40% of our readers are females, and this is classic Westerns. This is shoot 'em up. And we drilled farther down and asked these females why they're reading Westerns, and it was for a clean read. They have no problem with violence, but get those F-bombs out of there. And they're buying classic Westerns. Anyway, we're going to be around for a minute. If anybody has any questions, feel free to come on up, and thank you for your time.